Hello and welcome back to another video of the Brainy Heart. Today we'll be talking about another component of blood. Yes, you guessed it, it's plasma. In the last video, we talked about white blood cells, red blood cells, and platelets. Let me just give you a quick review. Red blood cells carry oxygen to your tissues, muscles, and cells in your body. I like to call the red blood cells as the taxis because they carry oxygen. They also carry hemoglobin, which is a protein that makes the blood red, and they carry the oxygen inside the red blood cells. We also talked about white blood cells. I like to call the white blood cells as the cops because they fight any foreign material that could be potentially dangerous to you. And finally, we talked about platelets. I like to call the platelets as the ambulance or the handyman. That's because they block the hole that the blood is leaking out of when you're bleeding. And we'll talk about this third picture later in this video, so stay tuned. I hope this was a good review from the last video, and I hope it got your brain started back up on components of blood. I will also link the previous video about the components of blood up top, so that you can learn more about red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets in more detail. Anyways, let's get back to talking about plasma. Plasma is this light brown colored liquid that contains waters, ions, proteins like albumin and fibrin, which we'll talk about today. It also carries nutrients, wastes, gases, salts, enzymes, etc., etc. Plasma is what makes your blood liquid. If plasma was not there, your platelets, white blood cells, red blood cells, and everything else in your body would not be able to move, and hence your body parts will not receive any oxygen, nutrients, and your platelets and white blood cells will not be able to do their function. That means you would be dead. And you can't see plasma in its original color when you're bleeding. This is because the hemoglobin in red blood cells makes the plasma red. If you want to see plasma in its real color, you will have to take a blood sample, put it in a tube, and take that tube and put it in a centrifuge. A centrifuge is a machine that spins the tube at a really fast speed, and this speed causes the blood layers to separate into 3 different layers. And the 3 different layers are going to be plasma, red blood cells, and the final 1% is going to be platelets and white blood cells and other stuff that's in your blood. Plasma also has clotting factor. This helps the platelets stay put, and it also sometimes takes over for the platelets so that they can go help other spots. We'll talk more about clotting factors when we talk about fibrin. And plasma that has no clotting factor is called serum. And there's also something called plasma donations. You might have heard this phrase. Well, plasma donation is really important for people who don't have clotting factor in their body, and for people whose body parts don't get enough oxygen, or their blood is less liquidy. So what happens when you're donating plasma is that there's this machine that takes in blood, just like what you do during a blood donation, But this time, the machine takes out the plasma from the blood and sends back the blood into your body. And plasma donation can save a lot of people. That was plasma for you guys. Now, let's talk about albumin. Yes, albumin is found in eggs, but it is also one of the most important proteins that lives in your plasma/blood. It is made in the liver and it's brought into the blood vessels. It is made in the liver along with a lot of other proteins, and then it's brought into the blood vessels to do its thing. Let me tell you some of albumin's functions. Albumin is responsible for helping blood fluid from leaking into other tissues. It also carries enzymes, hormones, and vitamins inside it. If you have low levels of albumin, that means there's a problem with your liver or kidney because they're not producing enough albumin. That was the albumin for you. Now, let's talk about fibrin. Imagine that you're playing soccer with your friends, and God forbid, you fall down on a sharp stone, and this stone cuts your skin. It doesn't go as deep, but it still causes the blood to bleed. Well, this is when fibrin and platelets come into action. First, the platelets come in and rush into the spot where the blood is leaking from, and they plug it. After the platelets do their job, the fibrin comes in and puts a mesh over the platelets, and this is more or less like stitching up the hole. And this is what doctors do when they cut open your body to do surgeries. They stitch it back together. And that's one way to think about it. And fibrin is also one of the clotting factor in the blood. It is also called factor law. That was a basic function of fibrin. Fibrin and albumin are the two main proteins that are present in your plasma. And remember, there are tons more proteins that live in your plasma. That was it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and learned from it. I'm always open to comments, questions, and suggestions. Also, check out my blog at brainyhearts.wordpress.com. This is the Brainy Heart signing off. I'll catch you later in the next video.